Good morning, America. My name is Robin Denton from South Africa. I was born in London, England. I have traveled the world and I'm currently living here in Morocco on lockdown. And today I want to talk about this unlawful killing by the police officer in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. And I want to be very clear about what I want to say here today, because the whole world is watching. And as the leader and founder of the Africa Unite Party, no one is above the law, not even the police. As a South African, I went up against my president, my ex-president Zuma, and charged him with theft, fraud and corruption, and was successful in charging him. Our party is founded upon the principle of democracy and freedom, and we are fighting in Africa against any racially motivated violence, any tribally motivated violence, any gender-based violence. So our principles are about African unity. And because this matter impacts the diaspora of African people in America, I want to talk about that. So right now, I'm going to actually read a statement to you, and I want you to share this video all around the world and eventually get it onto the desk of your president, President Trump, because something has to be done. I used to live in Los Angeles, by the way. Police brutality in the ghoulish underbelly of America. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Mama, mama, stop, you're killing me. These were the words of the victim, George Floyd, pleading for his life. The latest and most gruesome police brutality killing coming out of America has put a stain on all persons wearing a blue uniform all over the world. It has shown us how low and how brutal the underbelly of power is on the streets of America, for armed officers to execute, to extinguish the life of a man in their care, in broad daylight, begs the question, why? Why would an officer of the law anywhere in the free world do such a thing? What kind of military training, even in wartime, would take their prisoners in such a cruel, heartless way? Let me be clear about this. The daylight killing of Mr. Floyd was a racially motivated act of violence and murder in plain sight. It was a ghoulish murder, a crime staged for the world to see. It should enrage every freedom-loving person everywhere on this planet Earth. Every police officer in the city of Minneapolis not only should hang their heads in shame, but take off their uniforms and burn them in front of the steps of the city hall of that city, in a very, very big bonfire publicly. That uniform is not fit to be worn again by anyone administering the law of the land and the great American Constitution. It is not worthy in any respect anywhere in the world. Yes, this time the world is watching. This time the world is watching. This goes beyond a simple murder charge or punishing one or two persons in the blue uniform. What we, the people of the free world, saw on such a videotape was a blow-by-blow account of a public execution. What kind of culture would produce such a thing? Let me be clear about this. This kind of thing is not acceptable in the 21st century, in any civilization, and certainly no police force can command the respect of any community with such heinous, evil actions of race hatred. Because that is exactly what this was. A racially motivated execution in plain sight, in broad daylight, for the whole world to see. It doesn't matter if the man was white on the ground or black, but it matters when the perpetrator was of a different race. If roles had been reversed and the person on the ground was white and the man on the top was black, it would be exactly the same, exactly as bad. And as a South African experiencing all this racial hatred in a country which was divided by race, when I see this in America, a free country, in the 21st century, I have to speak out. Even as a white man, okay? Because I'm also a human being. This was much more than a normal police brutality killing. The entire story of what was going through this man's brain, that cruel police officer, as he put his knee on the man's neck, is all told in his insane, murderous eyes. The story is all there for everybody to see. He appeared as if he was in a trance, a killer's trance, like a lion with an impala in his mouth. That kind of look. Squeezing the life out of his victim by applying pressure until the body was totally limp, dead, dead, dead. Let me elaborate. I've done a bit of research and I've had a bit of experience in my life of this kind of thing growing up in apartheid South Africa. The man was on the ground. He was compliant from the time of his arrest. He did not attempt to flee or resist. He was passing off a $20 fake bill. That was his crime. A non-violent crime. The only question mark is, why did they wait so long to put him in the back of the police car? The stretcher didn't just happen to be there. They had him on the ground for nearly 9 minutes. 9 minutes, it's a long time in a very tense situation. They had already called an ambulance or a vehicle with a stretcher, and he was taken away on that same stretcher, dead on the scene. That means whatever was intended was already planned to happen. Why the stretcher? This officer knew what he was doing. He was totally intentional. He wanted this man to be unconscious in the very least, but dead in the very most. And possibly this insanity overtook him to commit such a crime in broad daylight. The next question I want to ask as a legal man, because I have a legal background, is what kind of move was that when you put a knee on his neck and rest your weight on that knee by leaning into the man's neck like this, on the ground like this? I did some research, and I used to do some martial arts myself, and I discovered it's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu move, BJJ. It's a modified jiu-jitsu which comes from Japan, and it uses a number of techniques to force opponents into a chokehold and into submission. And this arrest and killing was all about submission. I checked some of the chat forums, and it's regarded in general as a dirty move. In fact, it's not even taught in the police academies in America. Okay? I also checked with some of the police training methods used to subdue perpetrators, or in this case, victims. It's not used or even encouraged anywhere in normal practice, but as a stranglehold, it doesn't leave any bruises. So it can be used off camera, and there is no evidence of any police brutality. It's called a neck choke. In South Africa, at John Forster Square, they used to use this technique and many other techniques to say he slipped on a slope, on a piece of soap, and hit the back of his head, and we jumped out the window on the 9th floor and committed suicide. Meanwhile, it was police brutality, because there was no cameras in those days, no CCTV, no cell phones, okay? Strangulation like this normally would last a few seconds or a couple of minutes until a person was unconscious. I was once jumped in Mexico, and I was strangled and put to the ground, and I went unconscious, and I nearly died. And that was only after maybe 2 or 3 minutes. This was 9 minutes. This was intentional. This lasted now 9 minutes and beyond what was necessary. This is all about the abuse of power by one single man. He was sending a message. Okay? This officer intentionally squeezed the life out of this man on national, worldwide television. How crazy is that? It was as if he was high on some kind of drug. A drug called power. He was in control. He was in charge. He was like a lion with his prey in his mouth, squeezing the life out of this man. So this particular officer used a martial art move to subdue this, what was known by his peers, a gentle giant. He was not a violent man. Was he afraid? He didn't look it. Was he a sadist? Possible. He had a record of brutality in the past and complaints. What kind of mentality would produce such a cruel man to do such a cruel thing to another human being? And how the hell could he get hired by a police department who didn't do proper psychological checks on the man? Come on. Is it really a war on the streets of every single city and inner city and every corner in America that police officers are so afraid of being killed or hurt that they have this better us than them mentality and always wait for backup or use the threat of ultra-violence or fear to instill into the hearts of every would-be criminal, and in this case, it's everyone. Brutal, vicious, heartless, inhuman, sadist, murderous, psycho, insane, crazy. In this case, the crowd had gathered. The officers were being filmed. It looked like they were actors in a staged movie as the guy filming it pleaded with them to show mercy upon this man who was begging for his life. A man who had been arrested for allegedly committing a forgery or some such non-violent act. It turned out that he was passing off a fake $20 note, and he may not have known that it was a fake $20 note. It was something that would have had to be proven in a court of law. The guy left his car willingly. He sat on the pavement willingly, and then he was put onto the ground unwillingly, but he didn't resist. The only thing he says, "I can't breathe." And then he called out for his mother who had died 2 years ago. His dead mother. He called out for his dead mother. In this case, a crowd had gathered. The officers were being filmed. It looked like they were actors in a staged movie. And like ghouls, the crowd gathered and looked on, goading the police, who responded in the most cruelest, insane way possible by doing nothing. What would you or I have done in the situation when the police officer guarding George Floyd was ready to pull out his gun and fire at any moment? He had his hands in his pockets, and inside the pocket he had mace. So he was ready to take out the mace like this. He was ready. And the officers were like this, in a sort of aggressive, get out of my face type of stance. A sort of a dominating, macho type of stance. Okay? Not listening, not caring, not engaging with the community at all. Just pushing them away. What do we expect now as international Global citizens looking on at this video, because the world is watching Donald Trump and people of America. We expect and hope that the rule of law will prevail, and those who were part of this brutal public execution will pay for their crimes. There can be no doubt that this man knew exactly what he was doing. He was an experienced officer, as his record shows, with previous complaints against him, showing he had a propensity towards acts of violence. Never held accountable, he exercised supreme godlike power and a way of extinguishing the life of a man of color by using a humiliating way to demonstrate it, the boot on the neck. It is a symbolic act all over the world as a recognition of master and slave. And that is something that everybody knows deep down in the psyche of every nation. Master and slave, the boot on the neck, the foot on the neck, of domination and submission. An almost sexual pleasure seen through his eyes, this cruel man and his co-conspirators, as he squeezed out the life of this man. The 1,000-yard stare that did not stop his pit bull grip on this man's throat until his spirit was gone. The message to everyone is crystal clear. I am in charge. I have the power. I can do whatever I want. Back off. Submit. I am the lion, and this is my kill. No Miranda, no respect for this man's existence, nothing, no humanity. Like a master punishing his runaway slave all over again. If there was ever an example of a racially motivated killing, this was it. This video has struck a chord in the hearts of people all over the world, of all races and religions. Now in this time of chaos and disorder, we should witness such an ugly demonstration of what the underbelly of America looks like and has become, and what a police state looks like and has become. The land of the bold and the free. Come on, America. Building a wall for what? To keep people in? And America still divided between the haves and the have-nots, the powerful and the powerless, the strong and the weak, the black and the white, the slaves and the masters, a sick, divided America in dire need of healing and compassion and empathy, and America at war with itself. And it is its own worst enemy. President Donald J. Trump, whilst this man's life may not mean nothing to you, or it may mean something to you, I don't know. It means something to every justice-loving person in the world. Any person with a heartbeat, because it was so graphic, it was so visual. This man's life means something to every freedom-loving person of the free world. How many police brutalities occur in Russia or in South Africa or in Iran? Many. But this one makes all the difference. Why? Because if you are walking down the beach and you see a whole bunch of starfish on the beach, and you say, what difference does it make if I pick up this one starfish and throw it back into the sea? The question is, it makes a difference to this starfish. And in this case, it makes a difference to every victim of police brutality all over the world. That's why. By executive order, we ask you to disband this entire police force and replace it completely. It is not worthy to hold such an office of a police force. It's a disgrace, not only to the American Constitution, but to every freedom-loving human being around the world. It's not worthy to be called a police force. It should be disbanded by executive order. by executive order it should be disbanded, because it has brought shame upon the police everywhere around the world. Every life matters. That's why you have to do it, Mr. President. A clear message should be sent for all time that this behavior cannot be tolerated, not just in America, but anywhere. This stained police force cannot be allowed to continue to police this community, or any community in America for that matter. It has lost its authority today, completely and utterly. Justice will see its day, we hope, in a court of law. But until this street culture of us and them is rooted out from this police force and the community, there is no way you can expect the citizens of this city or any city in America to obey and submit to anyone wearing such a uniform of any kind. That's why the Minneapolis Police Department should be made an example of. Specifically, if police officers in England and elsewhere manage to work without resorting to extreme levels of violence, why can't you? They don't need guns. Ad infinitum. Illegal police killings and retaliation and rioting. For some it seems the American Civil War is not over. And that is a shame. But it can end if something changes in the hearts of men. And the system changes. We can't accept it. Because if we accept it as a society, that means we become dumbed down to it. And tomorrow, when it happens again, we won't even blink an eyelid. Okay? That's why it's so important. Let us pray for George Floyd's family. Let us pray for justice in the underbelly of America, in its streets and in its prisons and police forces who maintain the law. Let us pray for change, because something has to change for change to come. This change, this time, must be a systemic one. If we think of Rodney King riots in Los Angeles of 1992, that claimed over 63 lives and over 2,000 people injured and millions of dollars of damage, we cannot ignore what we have seen in 2020, 30 years later. This is far worse because the entire world is watching. This isn't just police brutality and killing. It is police inhumanity and murder. As the founder of the Africa Unite Party in South Africa, and as an ex-freedom fighter with years of experience in racially and tribally motivated killings of this kind, I call upon the President of the United States to take decisive action, not only against this act of hatred, but against all future acts of hate. If you want to build a community of love and respect for the law, you have to build a police force that is respected to uphold the law of the land. When people become animals, your country becomes a prison. And if your prison has no bars, then what good is your freedom, or your constitution, or your flag, or your democracy, or your country? This was a racially motivated crime, and it goes way beyond the punishing of one police officer. In our digital age, we look to America as the leader of the free world to lead by example. This example right now is a very bad one. Certainly, I am glad to live in a country where the rule of law is upheld and the community respects its police force. Why isn't that so, Mr. President, in the America of the 21st century? The world is watching. I thank you.